Okay, so Bret Weinstein recently made the rounds on social media, on mainstream medias even. So I saw his interview on Joe Rogan, and I also saw that he had an interview with Fox News. So basically, just if you didn't know, Bret Weinstein he used to be a professor. He's now doing a fellowship at Princeton, and he got kicked out because basically a bunch of social justice warriors were angry at him because he didn't support everything they believed in, and so he got kicked out. And yeah, just a not a very nice story. That I think most people, reasonable people, would be like, that was kind of not very smart and rational from the students at the time. But anyway, moving on. So he went, so he made the rounds, and then he talks about this idea called Unity 2020, which he's starting as some kind of new political landscape that he hopes will be better, more sustainable, but also healthier in terms of the political climate and in terms of the people and the ability for both sides to come to agreements and reach consensus. So, all right, to explain it pretty much, in its full depth, you have two candidates. One is center right and one is center left. But of course, center isn't the traditional corporatist sense. It's like genuine progressive, but more centrist, and genuine conservative, but not all radical. So you have two non-radicals who are patriots and charismatic and principled and all the good stuff. And they run as a team rather than a president and vice president, a president and a vice president. It's more of a collective living organism that make brief each other on decisions and know everything. All decisions that are going to be made are supposed to be bilateral. So unless it's impossible, all decisions should be bilateral. So the idea is that not only do you have both sides in the White House at all times, so you can't have one side always getting mad because the other side's in power, because now your side is also in power, so you can't say, oh, they're against everything we believe in anymore, because half the time that's all lies anyway, and they actually believe on the same things. So they just do it to divide and pander. So I guess in that sense it's a good development, but I think, to keep on the explanation, and then you just have this happen. So they'd have the president and the vice president, and then they'd flip after 4 years, and then flip and then flip until they're both until one of them's ineligible, and then obviously it's up to somebody else. And he proposed Andrew Yang, who's I don't know if he's a center left, but he's certainly a progressive guy. Although I think his foreign policy is maybe a bit more centrist. And then you have William McRaven, who is a conservative, but not too radical in his, he still believes in like separation of church and state, So you have these two personalities who then, they effectively are in power for 16 years, and effectively they take out this whole bipartisan toxicity that exists at the moment. So listen, I think in essence it's a valid concept. In that, if you do have a Republican and a Democrat, you pretty much immediately eliminate the whole divide politically, or at least you should in principle. But of course, in practice, there's always ways to divide people, not on political basis, but on social basis, class basis, race basis. There's a lot of ways to divide people, but I think this is a good idea. My only concern with it is that it could easily be abused by the establishment, and I've noticed that if it became a mainstream idea, that it will be taken up by establishment people. Like, I don't know, we'll have Pelosi and McConnell running together. Right, so basically you have the exact same ideologies in terms of corporations, elite, the same corporatist, neocon, neo-lib, do whatever the rich boys tell you, stay in a bunch of wars for no reason. So they're going to act like, one's progressive and one's conservative, but in reality they have the same ideology, but they just pander and try to divide people and try to make people pick sides. So I think you could have those kind of establishment personalities that abuse the system to just have longer terms. I don't know how you could actually regulate that, because as long as you say Dem and Republican, it could be any of either party. And while it's good because there's less political divide, it would be worse because now their corporate agendas will be even harder to reject. Not that they're being rejected at the moment, but I think it could backfire. But I think at the same time, I give them credit because it's something new, and I think the system needs some kind of revamping. People, Trump ran on draining the swamp. The swamp's been, it's the same swamp it was before. This guy chose the entire Goldman Sachs as his economic advisors. He chose Betsy DeVos as the education cabinet pick. It's like serious, fraudulence in terms of his rhetoric compared to his actions in terms of his cabinet picks. So that's an interesting thing to point out. And so if this does actually bring together two genuinely principled, authentic personalities and people, then it has a good place in politics. But I fear that it will be easily manipulated and turn into another power-grabbing way of keeping the status quo for as long as possible, and not doing what the American people desire, and pandering and filibustering as if their lives depended on it. It's still this movement, or whatever you want to call it. This idea is very much in its infancy, but we'll see how it progresses. If it does become a mainstream idea, it'll be interesting to see how that does indeed pan out. But I think it could go both ways, frankly. Although this kind of new type of thinking of how do we change government to make it serve the people, rather than big corporations, like the way it's done for the last 30-40 years, maybe even longer, is a good kind of new thought area, new field of thought, and a new space for philosophical debate, which is important, I believe. So I'll keep you guys updated on its progress, and let me know what you guys think about it.